there's a couple of things I want to get to. RFK, of course, my gosh, they have set the world on fire. I think the most interesting part of this topic, we've done talked about everything else, how this win catapults him to put themselves in a position to possibly be in the Final Four. And I think that that's worth discussing right now. We'll open up with you, Ms. Lee. I think all this was a dream beforehand. But after this week, are we in a position to say that Chris Buescher could very well be in the Final Four at the end of the year?
Well, he's got momentum on his side. The team's riding high. He's won at Darlington before. So, yeah, I think it's within the realm of possibility that we do see Chris Buescher in the Final Four. I've been a big fan of his since he won the Xfinity race at Mid-Ohio years ago, one of the first races I went to. And, he's obviously got mentorship and friendship from Brad that has obviously had a very positive impact on his career.
Right.
I definitely think it's the realm of possibility that we could see him in the Final Four.
Yeah, you said it, Ms. Lee. Obviously, to know that your teammate has your back is one thing, but when your teammate is also your owner and he's also a NASCAR Cup champion, I mean, Buescher had all the time in the world. You remember, he spent most of his career over at JTG. He spent, I think, one season in Front Row Motorsports where he got that win at a rain-shortened Pocono race, and then he quickly was shipped over to JTG, who was a Chevrolet team. So he wasn't ever really part of the Ford meetings or anything like that, of course. I'm sure that he was only in contract with Roush. He comes over to Roush Fenway Racing basically on this overnight deal where it sends, Ricky Stenhouse out the door. And then a new ownership comes in and is like, hey, I'm going to do everything I can to get Chris Buescher in victory lane. I'm sure at that point in time, Chris was like, yeah, this guy's going to come over. Of course he's going to focus on himself. He's a Cup champion. He's used to winning. Why would he be worried about me, brother? If Chris Buescher even had that inkling of doubt, no wonder he has bonded so well with Brad, because Brad wasn't lying. Brad had catapulted this kid into a position to be in the Final Four at the end of the year. Tad Taylor.
I think Chris Buescher is an easy contender. Now, that doesn't take away anything from Brad Keselowski, because Brad Keselowski's been knocking on the door in a number of these races, especially in the last couple of races that RFK has been up front. I know Brad hasn't won yet, but you can't count him out either. It seems like these two drivers have essentially raised the bar for one another. Brad believes in Chris Buescher, and it seems, and if you listen to the post-race interview from Saturday night, Chris literally said, this is just as much as Brad's win as it is mine. So it literally looks like these two, not only are they working well as drivers for race teams, but they're treating each other like they're brother, like they're pretty much brothers. Like they rely on one another very heavily.
Right.
And Chris knows, that Brad's got his back, as you guys have mentioned. So if Chris knows that, he's going to believe in him, and Brad's going to do the same belief back in Chris as well.
And honestly, with Brad looking at, I'm not saying he's going to retire tomorrow or anything, but with Brad looking at the bigger picture of his future, what propels him better as a team owner than to have his driver get that championship.
Right.
Brad would probably like to have, another one under his belt, but he's more of a big picture guy.
Right.
So if he can get Chris the championship,
right,
at the sacrifice of his own getting it. Yes, exactly.
Right. You have so much sponsor power, so much sponsorful power. If Brad can successfully bring Chris Buescher a championship, who wouldn't want to sign that dotted line? Because you've got a champion in Brad, and now he's set his career aside to make sure that Buescher has everything he needs. And I'm not saying, look, I think it could come. I think Brad could just as easily win the next 3 races like Buescher has. This season's not over with by no means.
Right,
and
but
if
I'm
RFK
saying,
is hot,
but I'm just saying that Brad is not above sacrificing himself to make sure Chris gets it.
Exactly. And he stated that from the beginning, which is admirable. It's one thing to say it; it's another thing to prove it. And